Hey everybody, Hoosier Jedi here with another review for you. This time talking episode 20 of season 1 of The Flash called The Trap. And oh my god, is this totally not one of the best episodes of the season so far. This was fantastic. And, Tom Cavanaugh has been doing a really good job with the Reverse Flash, and they've done an awesome job of making Reverse Flash seem like a very serious villain. This is not somebody to take lightly, but this episode, we find out Harris Thawne, whatever. Reverse Flash has been playing everybody on it, just levels we have not even imagined, and he's been doing this for years. He's got surveillance cameras in everybody's home. Like, these guys had no idea just how completely and utterly they were being played, and yet it all makes perfect sense in retrospect, and it's just damn awesome. I love smart villains. And this whole episode is just like, oh my god, you thought Reverse Flash was smart and, well ahead, a step or two ahead of the heroes for the most part for most of the season. Here it seems like, okay, the heroes they're finally a step ahead of him. They're getting ready to really drop the boom on him. And it turns out that he's just like, you stupid bastards. You thought you had me. And it's just like, oh, god damn. Oh, I'm not kidding. I literally want to go and watch the episode again right now. But yeah, Arrow's on in like 45 minutes. So yeah. Let's get into it. So let's start with what's going on with the characters, and we might as well start small and work our way up like we so often do. And let's start with Joe. Again, we don't get really huge stuff with Joe. I did like that flashback, and this is something that somebody had pointed out in some of the comments I read. Is like, I think they're recycling the hospital set from Arrow. And, this is what somebody had said online, and I'm like, you know what? I think that person might be right. That really does look suspiciously like the hospital set from Arrow. But anyway, we kind of get to see how Joe was dealing with things when Barry was back in that coma in the early days, and unsurprisingly, the answer is not well. But it really sort of goes in there and fits with what Joe's been saying. It's like, I've always had this bad feeling about Harrison Wells. And again, Eobard Thawne comes in there and just strikes when Joe is at his absolute most vulnerable, and doubtlessly had power of attorney for Barry. And I kind of was a little surprised that he'd ever said to Joe, like, look, yeah, I know I caught my particle accelerator exploded, causing this, and I have all this stuff, and I want to start doing this to make up for the damage I've done. It kind of struck me as maybe a card he might play against Joe, but he doesn't. And I don't know, maybe it could just be that he knows that being that insincere, Joe might sniff him out. Now, one thing that's interesting about Eobard Thawne in the comics is that he actually he makes that comment like about how the police are still useless in the future that he comes from and all that. Well, if you read the story where they kind of give you the modern origin of Reverse Flash, he actually did have a brother who had become a police officer. And his brother found out that Eobard had been doing illegal experiments. So Eobard used his Reverse Flash powers to go back in time and basically make it so that his brother was never born and that he was an only child. Now, stop and think about this. This guy erased his own brother from history because he was inconvenient. This is a nasty son of a bitch. I mean, then again, he murdered Barry's mom because he was mad that he couldn't kill Barry. So he just basically took it out on an innocent person who happened to be there. It's like, wow, what a bastard. And anyway, just going on with that. Yeah. Now, I'm not really sure, like the whole thing of like, we'll get Harrison Wells to confess and then we can free my dad from jail. It's like, Barry, I'm pretty sure that you're going to need more evidence than that. I mean, that's really not a proper, actually admissible in court kind of confession. And yeah, I mean, that's just bullshit. Then again, the actual way the law is supposed to work is played with very loosely in the CW verse. Hey, remember the time when Laurel got to put her ex-boyfriend's mother on trial? Yeah, yeah, it's totally cool to prosecute your ex's mother. I still can't get over that. That was the most. It was like some of the biggest legal bullshit I have ever seen any TV show try and pull. And I had to endure that uh, custody thing on Veronica Mars years back. God, what the fuck was with that bullshit? Okay, so swearing, we all like it. But anyway, so again, nothing particular to say about Joe beyond that. Now, Iris had some interesting stuff going on. Here we see that Eddie is looking to propose to her, and I really did like that scene where, well, actually, no, I guess this is a bit of a Joe thing, where Eddie says, like, "Oh, Joe, I want your blessing that, to ask your daughter to marry me." And Joe says no, and that's the great thing is that he doesn't even he won't even grant Eddie the courtesy of explaining why. His partner, his friend, his ally. It's just like, no. I mean, we do find out Joe's motives later, but it's like, Joe, seriously, I kind of think you owe Eddie at least fucking lie to Eddie. Give him something, because seriously, like leaving him hanging like that's pretty bullshit. But yeah, so Joe wants Iris to marry him, and Iris doesn't really seem to have the slightest clue as to where Eddie is going with this, which is pretty weird. But I do agree with Joe's assessment of her, that Iris would eventually realize at some point that she didn't really love Eddie, but probably would stay with him because of having made a vow to do so. That's totally in character for Iris. And then we also see that when Barry was in the coma, he kind of gave her a shock when she touched him one time. And then here the same thing happens when she touches the Flash, and then she realizes, oh my God, Barry is the Flash. So, you have to wonder what her reaction to that is going to be. And I have the feeling that she's actually probably going to take it pretty well. I don't really think she's going to get angry and do a lot of screaming and stuff, because that would be a real serious disservice to Iris as a character. And while Iris as a character has had her highs and lows this season, I think the writers have more respect for her than that. So yeah, let's see. What else do we need to talk about? Oh yeah, of course Eddie. This season, he wants to marry Iris. He gets that crock of bull from Joe, and then he gets kidnapped by Reverse Flash. And I love that moment where Eobard introduces himself, and he's like, "Oh my God, this has all been about me." And for a minute, I was like, God, if this really turns out to have been all about Eddie, I'm going to be damn surprised. I mean, it would be a hell of a twist, but it certainly would be a very interesting one. And then the Reverse Flash just basically laughs in his face and says, like, nah, I just need to kind of keep you handy so that I can make sure that I get born one day. And, I don't think, I've seen, like, some people have kind of interpreting this as, sort of being a bit of ego on Eddie's part. But think about this. Okay, you meet somebody who you have really good evidence to believe is actually a time traveler from the future. And then this person reveals that they are one of your descendants. How would you not assume that the reason they came back in time had something to do with you? It's like, oh yeah, you just happen to be hanging around this guy who's the real reason I'm here. You wouldn't think that. Like you don't time travel and spend time around your own ancestors for just for the hell of it. I mean, again, Eddie made what, under the circumstances, was a perfectly reasonable guess. He just turned out to be wrong. So I think we need to cut Eddie some slack on that one. But I really want to see more of what's going on between Eobard and Eddie. Just what exactly is he going to drop about the future? Because it really has been heavily implied, or at least in the mythology of the Flash, that Eddie might at some point become the Reverse Flash, the original Reverse Flash, and then just sort of kick off the rivalry between the Thawne and Allen families that's so a core part of the Flash lore, especially during the Mark Waid years. So let's see. Yeah, that covers that. Nothing really particular to say about Caitlin this episode, although I was really intrigued by what Eobard said to her, and like when she and Cisco are sort of like you betrayed us, you asshole. He's like, you know what, your lives are already immeasurably better because of me being in them, and you have to really wonder, well, what does that mean? I mean, Cisco's destiny in the comics was to become Vibe, a hero, a member of the Justice League, a good guy. I mean, originally, sure, Vibe was a really stupid, superpowered breakdancer / offensive Hispanic stereotype, but in modern interpretations of the character, he's a pretty well respected person. On the upside, though, in modern times, Cisco also managed to salvage his relationship with his brother. Before he and his brother were seriously on the outs. So yeah, that did ultimately happen because Cisco was working for Harrison Wells. Now, Caitlin's destiny, well, it seems to be to become at least going by the comics, to become the villain Killer Frost. So if it's sort of in a situation where she might not be heading down that road, then yeah, her life would definitely be better. On the other hand, the producers, the other behind the scenes people have said, well, let's put it this way, you'll probably be seeing Killer Frost before you see Vibe. But now that we've opened the door to alternate timelines and stuff, that's a possibility. If Barry can sort of bounce around from timeline to timeline, why not other people? And wouldn't that be a hell of a twist? Caitlin Snow from an alternate universe where she did become a metahuman, where she did become Killer Frost. Ooh, that would be damn interesting. And of course, you've got to have Killer Frost fights Firestorm. I mean, that's just how it works. So, yeah. Very cool. Very cool. No pun intended on that one. Speaking of Cisco and Vibe, more than a few people have noticed that the shades he wears in this episode as part of the VR gear do look like some glasses that Vibe had as part of his costume in various incarnations. And speaking of glasses, did you see at one point Barry puts on some goggles, and they're the exact same goggles that Captain Cold wears in the comics? I was like, wait a minute. Wait, those are Captain Cold's glasses. Oh, man. That was so awesome. Let's see, what else? Yeah, let's kind of dive into the time travel thing. So, Barry and company get into the time vault. I much prefer to call it the Braille room because it looks like all the wallpaper is Braille or whatever, but okay. So Time Vault it is, and they interact with Gideon. We find out that Barry is the one that invents Gideon of all things. That seems really weird because Barry's not really a computer programmer. Some of the more technologically advanced, skilled members of the Justice League would make a lot more sense. Like having it been Ray Palmer would make tons of sense. Was it Thomas Holt, Curtis Holt, Michael Holt? Yeah, Michael Holt, Mr. Terrific. He would be the sort of guy who would do something like that. Maybe even having this AI have some sort of relationship to Booster Gold, which would make loads of sense. And we totally might get to see Booster Gold because they've confirmed Rip Hunter is going to be on the spinoff. And if you're familiar with the character of Rip Hunter, he has very strong ties to Booster Gold. And if you're familiar with Geoff Johns, one of the main people behind the show, Geoff Johns loves him some Booster Gold. Geoff Johns loves Booster Gold. And Geoff Johns also wrote the best interpretation of Booster Gold I've ever read. He really, for me, made that character. But let's see, what else? Oh yeah, there was also when Barry is talking with Gideon, and she starts to say, Barry Allen, director of the Central City PD, and Barry starts to learn a little bit about Future, and she says founding member, founder of, or something like that, and it gets cut off after founder. Well, there's an online comic. There's a preview. They have one page set in basically kind of a one-page adaptation to that scene, where they snuck in the words founder of the Justice, or something like that, of Justice. is how I think they said it. And of course, we know that this is meant to be a reference to the Justice League. And if I remember correctly, in its original incarnation, the Flash was not only one of the founding members. I think Black Canary was in there, and Martian Manhunter, Green Arrow too. I don't remember exactly. But the very first leader of the Justice League was indeed the Flash. So now, also with the newspaper, and took some people who took screen caps of the episode. You can see them. They mentioned Green Arrow, not the Arrow, but Green Arrow, which shows that one day indeed Oliver will be called Green Arrow. Possibly, what I'm thinking is they might do is, okay, the Arrow, aka Roy Harper, is dead, and then some other hero apparently arises to take the Arrow's place, and people start calling him Green Arrow, not realizing it was actually just the same dude. It also mentions the Atom, and then it mentions Hawkgirl as having helped Flash fight Reverse Flash in the future. And Hawkgirl is one of the characters that has also been announced for the spinoff. Why she keeps being called Hawkgirl way well into the future. Something like 10 years when she's obviously probably going to be well into her 30s and probably should just be called Hawkwoman. I don't know. It's just like one of those things. I mean, hell, the Invisible Girl was called the Invisible Girl all the way from the 60s until like the early 1980s when she finally upgraded it to Invisible Woman. So, yeah. It's just one of those things, people. It's just one of those things. And let's see, what else do we have? Yeah, again, just the whole thing when they try to spring that trap on the Reverse Flash, and he's 10 steps ahead of them the whole way. I'm just like, they're all right. This is gonna work. They're gonna catch him, and then we're gonna get some real answers as to what's going on. And of course, it doesn't happen. And I absolutely love those scenes. I mean, God bless Tom Cavanaugh. This is a man doing phenomenal work. Like where we see him in that flashback, looking down at Barry in the bed, and he goes, I've dreamed about moments like this. You before me, completely helpless. And then he sort of talks about in the more present time about how much he's enjoyed actually working with Team Flash, and he sort of reflects on the irony of, in order to get home, I've had to create you, and then he even says, like, despite everything that we've been through together, I still feel nothing but hatred for you. Isn't that the weirdest thing? He really loved being a part of Team Flash, but never in his heart for one moment did he ever feel anything for hatred but hatred for Barry himself. I mean, he even said, like, having Cisco around was like having a son. And you have to imagine that having Caitlin around was probably like having a daughter for him. This bond between these three other people. He loved that. But one of them he despised with every fiber of his being and never relented on that for a moment. What the hell did Barry do to this guy? Or more accurately, most likely, what does Eobard Thawne think that Barry did to him? Because the problem with Thawne, like so many of the villains, is that basically he blames the hero, his enemy, for stuff that's really his fault. So again, what is it that inspired this hatred? A battle that has lasted centuries. What's going on here? Are we even going to find out this season? Because man, oh man, there's no way that we are never going to see the Reverse Flash again after this season. Reverse Flash is basically going to be like Malcolm Merlyn on this show. And I don't think they're ever going to become allies, but he's going to pop up probably from time to time. He's going to ultimately be, as befits an arch nemesis, the one bad guy the hero can never truly get rid of. I mean, not unless Tom Cavanaugh decides, like, okay, this has been fun, but I'm going to do other stuff. But yeah, again, it's probably not going to be a John Barrowman situation where he's going to be a series regular next season. But totally, I would expect Tom Cavanaugh to pop up again at least once a season from now on. But again, that's just me spitballing. Anyway, guys, I'm going to call it here. As always, please comment, rate, and subscribe. And of course, you can follow me on Twitter at Hoosier Jedi. So next time, take care and have a good one.